Hey everyone, it's Lukas Arellano, and in this video, I'm going to be covering exactly what a BDR or Business Development Representative is, also known as Sales Development Representative or SDR. So many people are out there screaming and preaching, breaking into tech sales is the best thing that you can do with your life, but they don't really give you the true day-to-day of what that entails and prevents you from understanding really what you'll be walking into. I'm going to cover exactly what a BDR SDR is, the pros and cons, and the day-to-day so that you can get a better understanding of what you're signing up for if you do land this job. Now, many of you may not be familiar with my background. I started my sales career here at Layton, where I am now a account executive at. It's a closer, and that's the whole point of landing the BDR role. I was a BDR for about 16 months, and between the 23,000 cold calls that I made, my coworkers' experience, people in my network, the great relationship I have with my boss, you can definitely say I understand the sales world, especially the BDR/SDR side of things. Now, BDR and SDR are typically used interchangeably, so I'm gonna stick with BDR to sound less redundant. So what is a BDR? What's their main function? The BDR is typically the main source of leads for tech companies. It's very rare that you're going to have a marketing team that is feeding you purely inbound leads, is what they call them, or warm leads. Pretty much a prospect went on your website and filled out a form. You'll hear once you land this job, it's an ongoing joke that marketing doesn't work.
We're salespeople. We blame all our failures on marketing. We're salespeople, and that's because it actually is marketing's fault.
Because BDRs just generate way more leads than the marketing team, typically, unless you work for a huge company with a huge name. The main tool that you're gonna be using to generate these leads is by cold calling. It's the phones.
Hey, my name is Lucas. I'm a tax consultant. I was doing some research.
We're not interested. Thanks for your time.
Now, if you're selling tech or a B2B service, it's way different than selling a B2C service or telemarketing and trying to get people to fill out a survey or collect their social security number, as all these scammers are trying to do. When cold calling B2B, you're interrupting a C-suite's day. A C-suite is a CEO, COO, CFO. You're interrupting a very busy person's day trying to sell them a product, and you're not going to be the only one doing it. There's going to be hundreds of other salespeople in their inbox trying to do the same thing. So trying to break through the noise is very hard. If you do end up covering or uncovering a problem or pain point that your product or solution can solve, the goal is to get them in a meeting with the account executive so they can take over the rest of the sales cycle and end up closing the deal. The BDR is the driving force of every sales org, and since this space is so competitive to get into, the candidates are highly vetted before entering the role. So it's very important that in your interview process, you demonstrate that you have the soft skills needed to succeed at the role. As I mentioned, you don't have to go to college to land a BDR role. Most of the time, hiring managers are looking for your soft skills and transferable skills from previous experiences. And if you can prove that you have what it takes to be a BDR, you're driven, you're hungry to learn, you're coachable, all these things, you're very money hungry, compared to someone that doesn't have those skills but has a college degree, the guy without them is going to land the job. So if you need help translating your skills from the past and standing out from the people with college degrees, I have a link in the description with the exact same guy that I used to land my job. So feel free to check that out. It's completely free. Let's move on to what are the pros and cons of being a BDR. I'm gonna start with the cons. And if you can't make it through this part, then there's no point in actually getting into the industry. And this is the part that a lot of people tend to leave out. So it's important to understand this. Being a BDR, or in the sales world in general, is an extremely high pressure environment. If you don't hit your quota, you're gonna get fired eventually. Good companies put people on a PIP or a performance improvement plan, and that's just to make sure they're doing everything in their power to help that rep hit quota before they let them go. Also, you get judged on things that you really can't control. You're getting judged on the revenue you bring in, which is up to your account executive to close. Sometimes you get judged on the amount of contracts you're bringing in, which is up to the account executive to close. And you're getting judged on meetings booked. Now, you can't control how many meetings booked you get, but you can control how many calls you make and eventually do the math backwards to see exactly how many calls you need to make to book those meetings to hit quota. So hitting quota really isn't that hard as long as you're mimicking top performers and you're putting in a high level of activity. But it is a lot of pressure, and it's very important to understand that. Number two, there's a ton of rejection, which I touched on earlier. You're literally calling rich, busy businessmen trying to run a company in the middle of the day, trying to get them to buy your product. Some really interesting facts here. The average connection rate is 4.78%, and it takes on average 8 touches to reach a prospect for the first time. A touch is a call typically, or maybe an email, but emails aren't that effective. So doing the math, it takes 168 calls just to book one meeting. So let that sink in. And last but not least, it's highly redundant. If you're making $100 a day, it could be pretty easy to burn out, especially if you don't know how to structure your day in the right way. Most of the day, you're gonna be dialing prospects who don't answer. And some people can't handle that and they end up burning out in 3 months. So you have to make sure you can deal with rejection and the redundancy that comes with the job. What are the pros? Why would I wanna become a BDR? First of all, it's highly financially rewarding for the first year that you're in. Base salaries span from 50K to 70K on the high end, and there's a 20K variable is what they call it. It's your on-target earnings. So there's commission with this role, and if you hit quota, if you hit the expectation, you'll typically make 20,000 more than what your base salary is. So if they're paying you 50 salary base, you'll end up making 70 to 90. Some companies have uncapped commission structures, meaning if you pull in a couple deals, really big ones, you can make way past your on-target earnings, as long as you're making that revenue goals or whatever the commission structure might look like. Another thing is the goal is to promote from BDR to account executive as soon as possible. And the way you do that is by crushing your quota. You'll make a ton of money on the way, but once you're account executive at a tech company, making 6 figures is a no-brainer. That's like on the low end of AEs after commissions. You could make up to 200. Sometimes people make 500 to $1 million, but those are like 1%ers, and I wouldn't get into this industry expecting to make that type of money as an AE. But it pays very well. You can make well over 200 if you perform well, and you don't need to go to college for that. So I think it's worth the rejection, in my opinion. Also, if you're entrepreneurial, sales is a business skill that every business needs. So the more that you master the skill, the more you can demand in salary. You can even start your business down the road. And on top of that, the career opportunities are huge. You can go into marketing, you can go into the technical side of the business, you can promote to a managerial role. Doors are opened up that are through this entry-level role as a BDR that would be a lot harder to land without getting your foot in the door as a BDR in the first place. So BDR is the lowest barrier to entry in corporate America. Now that you understand what a BDR is and you know the good and the bad that come with the job, now you need to understand the day-to-day of what you might walk into. Typically, everyone walks in the office, drinks their coffee, eats their donuts, takes their morning dump, and nobody works for the first hour. I'm totally kidding, kind of. There's an ongoing joke, it's called the morning lull or coffee hour. But if you want to be successful, you can't be one of those people. A huge part of being successful as a BDR, especially because it demands such high activity, sometimes it's making 100 calls a day, you need to create a time block schedule on your calendar so that you can prospect enough people to put into your sales cadence to make that $100 a day and minimize distractions. So the idea of time blocking is saying from 10 to 10:30, I'm turning off my phone, I'm not talking to my coworkers, I'm not picking up the phone for anyone, I'm not responding to emails, and I'm purely doing this activity. Eliminate all distractions. That will play a huge part in allowing you to hit your metrics. This is a great skill that you can mention in your interviews for job seekers. Hey, I know how to time block a schedule. Here's an example of what I would do if I got onboarded. In that time block schedule, you're gonna include time to prospect. Fanatical Prospecting is a great book for you to read if you're looking to get in this industry. It basically says you need to prospect daily regardless, or else your pipeline will dry up. So time to prospect, dial obviously, send emails, and clean up your pipe so that you have a organized CRM, customer relationship management software. It's basically just tracks all your calls and customer info and whatnot. Another big part of success as a BDR is A/B testing. Since you're sending so many emails and making so many calls, gathering data on what works is very easy, and you can do it over time as long as you track the right way. A/B testing is testing variables and using the data to see which one works best. So maybe one day I'll try this call opener. Maybe 1 month or week I'll try this opener, and maybe the next week or month I'll try this opener, and I'll see which ones got me the most meetings. Same thing happened with email. You can test different subject lines, and I'm constantly trying to improve what help you succeed. And a big part of your day is gathering data and testing new things. Between this and time blocking, you can mention this in your interview when they ask you, how do you plan on succeeding here? And that's gonna blow their mind because these are huge components of succeeding as a BDR. Back to the time blocking thing, here's actually an example of a time block schedule that you can use on the day-to-day. So from 9 to 10, you are making dials and sending emails at the same time. From 10 to 11, you're doing the same thing. Then 11 to 12, maybe you prospect for an hour. 12 to 1 obviously is lunch. 1, you could prospect. And then dial the rest of the day with some pipeline cleanup at the end of the day. That's a great time block schedule to have. And I encourage you to work in 20-minute schedules so that you dial for 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break. Dial for 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break. It will help you stay focused and not and fight the urge to get distracted because the work you're doing is so redundant. As you can see, most of your day is going to be spent calling prospects. And it sounds daunting, but I promise you it's not as bad as it sounds. There are so many ways to make it seem less redundant. You can prospect or send emails while you're dialing. Since most people don't answer anyway, you can dial in a sales bullpen with some of your coworkers. You can experiment with different call openers. All of these things will help you find joy in calling and make it seem less redundant. Now that you understand the pros and cons, the day-to-day of a BDR, you'll be able to make the right choice and really weigh the pros and cons and is this what you want for your future? If you make the decision to try to break into sales, I actually have the same guide that I use to land my BDR role without going to college or having experience in the description. So check the description out, subscribe, and stay tuned for more job hunts. I wish you the best.